get a bullet for you, buddy.
I mean, I'll do it if you want.
Want to talk about it? You should. Because I don't know much about the event itself. All right. Welcome back, everybody. I hope everyone had a nice break over the summer, doing lots of writing, hopefully. Hopefully getting all those edits for the anthology put in. So I guess first note of business, I guess there's an event this weekend in Acworth. Please tell us all about it. Oh, yes.
It's the Acworth Storyteller Book Festival this Saturday from 10 to 6. It's themed, the theme is ink and echo, writing stories, speaking the truth. They'll have authors, keynote speakers. It's a free event to everybody. You don't have to sign up or anything, just show up. I'll be there. I'm not sure if anyone else is coming with me. I haven't heard anything about anyone else, but I'll be representing CAW and doing a display of finished books that our members have to show our talent and effort. And if you have a book that you want me to take, let me know. I'll take it, put it up for display. But we aren't selling anything there. It's, like I said, from 10 to 3. It's in Acworth at the Rosenwald School, 4410 Cherokee Street.
That'll be great.
Give me the address again.
4410 Cherokee Street.
Cherokee Street, Acworth.
The location was the Roosevelt School?
Rosenwald.
Rosenwald.
Yeah.
Oh, Rosenwald.
Okay.
Chris, can we sell our anthology there or no?
I don't think we can. I didn't see anything saying we couldn't. But,
Right, I couldn't remember what it was like last year. I have those for you if you,
I wasn't planning on selling stuff, but if
No,
you
okay.
Well, I like what you've done. Chris put together a flyer. It's got 3 QR codes, one that leads to our website, one that leads to our newsletter and past newsletters, and then another one that links directly to these monthly meetings that we hold. It's really nice. You've just put together everything that we offer with our membership as far as monthly meetings, the critique groups, yearly writers conference, the workshops, and then our anthology. It's a really great advertisement of what we do. And, you know, we're constantly trying to get the message out that it's not really just writers for Cartersville. This is just where we meet. And so we really come from all over. And I mean, it's a really great way to get the messaging. So thank you. That's awesome.
yay, Chris.
Yeah, thank you. All right, so in just a minute, I will introduce Brie, but I did want to pass the attention to Katie, who's heading the anthology committee. Can you just kind of let us know where we're at right now?
We are very close. We have 2 more stories that are almost complete, ready to go. I've notified our young author winner, who is thrilled. Don't you love it when they're like, I didn't know I could write? And we're like, yes, you can.
Oh, that's awesome.
We're very close, and then we'll be working on the cover and on the forward and the back and ready to upload it. So it should be ready pretty soon.
That's so
within
cool too.
Within a month, it should be good to go.
For anyone who doesn't know, this is so far ahead.
Yes.
So far ahead.
Well,
of
we
what
kind of
we
planned it that way because, I mean, I saw the look of fear in everyone's eyes last fall. Like, oh my goodness, are we going to have it in time?
Yeah.
We're December and gift giving and whatnot, so.
Stressful. Good ideas.
So, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, very good.
It's going well.
Well, awesome. And I do have a mock cover
Yay.
for you to look at. So I brought my computer. So, all right. So I'd like to go ahead and open up the floor to our guest speaker today, Brie. Hello.
Hello.
You got to come up here so that you're on camera. Our topic today is the anatomy of a query letter, facilitated by Brie Sutherland, and you were going to tie in some information about traditional publishing as well.
Yes.
Okay.
A little bit about traditional publishing. The bulk of it will be diving into query letters, kind of a form query letter, what is expected in a query letter when you send it to an agent. But first, let's talk a little bit about traditional publishing. There was some requests about the process of that, what it typically looks like, and I'm not talking about traditional publishing with a small press, I'm talking about traditional publishing with a large publisher, what that looks like, because a small press is gonna be different. So, we can talk about, you know, if you get signed with the Big Five, or one of their imprints, or, a large indie like tour or something like that, this is what the process is probably gonna look like. Obviously, it'll be different for everybody, but this is in general what you can expect if you get a big publishing deal. So this is basically information that I have collected from podcasts, blogs, just kind of an amalgamation of information that I've collected over the last probably decade, listening to agents speak, listening to publishers speak, and so there are places on the internet that will say things different from this, and everybody has their opinion. So if you read something different, I'm open to hearing about that. And also, if you have any questions throughout the presentation, you just throw them out, and I can answer as we go. So the first thing that you have to do, and what a lot of people here have faced, is whether or not you want to be traditionally published or self-published. That's a really big question for a lot of people. And for every author, really, once you finish something, what do I want to do with this work? Traditional publishing can obviously be really disheartening because rejection is a necessary part of that. Almost every book gets rejected at some point, whether that's by an agent when they first get sent on query, or whether that's by a publisher when it's sent on submission. You're going to receive rejection, so that is something that can be a deterrent for a lot of people. But reasons to go with a traditional publisher over self-publishing is that you just really want that big publisher energy. Like, there are people, and I'm one of those, who just wants the validation of getting recognized by a big publisher. Another one is money. If you want a 5-figure advance, a 5, 6, never 7-figure advance, then you're gonna have to go with a big publisher. If you self-publish, you get a negative advance, right? So there is the monetary value there. Obviously, self-published authors have the potential to make more quickly because they can put their book out on their timeline. They can take all the royalties, et cetera, et cetera. But if you want that advance right when you're done and you've submitted, that's the only way to go. The other part of this is that if you really want your work seen by big-time editors, big professionals in the industry, then you kind of have to go into this avenue. There's a lot of gatekeeping with traditional publishing, so that's another thing, is to kind of get those big editors looking at your work. And then also, a lot of people want to avoid parts of self-publishing. Like Tammy was just saying, she really hated designing the cover for the anthology. And you don't have to design your cover, obviously, if you're self-published. You could pay someone to do that, but it's one or the other. You either have to, wade through learning accounting and learning, how to format a book, or you have to pay someone. So if you don't want to do either of those things, you gotta traditionally publish. The other thing, and this is another one of my personal motivations for traditional publishing, is I want to be submitted to certain prizes that self-published books cannot be submitted to. Obviously you have the Nobel Prize for fiction, you have like these really giant prizes, and I don't really want to be submitted to the Nobel Prize, but I would like to be submitted to the Hugo and Nebula Award. You can't be submitted to those if you're self-published. And again, that's like a gatekeeping thing that is really unfortunate, but if you want to be submitted to those prizes, then you have to traditionally publish. And then also, if you want to create more publishing opportunities for yourself in the future that you are being paid for up front, you have to traditionally publish. A lot of people get 2-book deals, 3-book deals right off the bat. And so you get that money up front to write your next book. You're not writing on spec anymore, which is a really great thing if you can secure a deal like that. Especially if you write serial fiction, that's an amazing thing. You write book 1, they pay you for book 2 and 3, and you're off to the races. It's great. So Kris actually saw someone who belongs here, just walk by. Okay, so just to go through the process really quickly of traditional publishing. So first, finish your manuscript, and then finish it like 7 more times. It needs to be perfect. the point of an agent is not to edit your manuscript. Your manuscript needs to be 95% of the way there. It needs to be 100% that you can do, but the agent's gonna look at a manuscript, and if it's 80% of the way, they're like, I don't have time for this. So it needs to be as far along as you can. Some authors, and this isn't necessarily recommended, but some authors pay for an edit before they submit to agents. That could be wasting your money because an agent is gonna make you rewrite some of your book, and a publisher will as well. So that might be a waste of money. If you've submitted a novel and it's getting rejections, that could be a way you wanna go if you're really in love with that particular manuscript. And then after you've finished it, you're done, you need to write a query letter. And we'll talk about that more in depth in a minute. But the third thing is that when you have your query letter, you wanna make a list of agents and all the details for those agents. So, what agency are they with? What do they publish? Where did you hear about them? Just personal information you can include in your letter to connect back to yourself. So you need to make a list of your dream agents, and then you need to, you're gonna batch your queries. So what this means is that you don't wanna send out 80 queries at once. You wanna send out 5 to 10 queries at one time. And that way, when you get feedback, you can kind of adjust what you're doing. So you can, say an agent says, oh, well, I like the idea of this, but I don't like this and this. Okay, well, maybe you don't need to change your manuscript. Maybe you need to change your query letter, right? So you really want to batch these. And what a lot of agents talk about, and this isn't a hard line for anybody, what a lot of agents talk about is if you have queried 100 agents with a single manuscript, you probably need to set that work aside and move to a different project. That is another thing about traditional publishing that might hurt some authors is, is that there is a point at which you should probably quit and move to something else. Hopefully you've been writing something else the whole time, and you don't want to be just sitting around waiting for agents to respond, because they can take 6, 8, 12 months to respond. But yeah, the 100 agents is kind of a round threshold of maybe you should move on. And then, let's see, if your manuscript is accepted, there are, I think, 4 different things that might happen at that point. You could get a request for revise and resubmit. Some agents do this, some agents do not. Revise and resubmit means, here's my edits. I'm not signing you right now, but if you make these edits, I could sign you. You have to kind of decide, okay, is this worth my time? Or do I actually think they're gonna sign me if I make these edits that they've suggested? Then, do you have a question?
I do have a question, but I didn't know if you wanted our questions at the end.
Yeah, questions are good.
I was just curious, in your research, if an agent is coming back with, revisions, suggestions, is it, obviously it wouldn't be line by line, but are we talking just plot, we're talking about character, we're talking topic, like?
Yeah, so it's all of it. It could be line by line. They might give you line edits, probably less so that. It could be you need to rewrite this from a different point of view. It could be you need to, change your main character. It could literally be rewrite every single word of this. Or it could be, hey, I want you to change this paragraph. It can literally be the gamut. They're not a line editor. They're not a structural editor. They can do whatever they want. I would say generally, they're not going to accept a manuscript that needs that much rewriting. So you could expect a major change that could take a lot of rewriting, like a point of view change, because they could like the story enough to take that on, but most likely it's going to be less edits because it's not worth their time to go through all that. Does that make sense?
It does.
So the second thing that might happen is that you get multiple offers of representation, and in that case, you can kind of do your little interviews with your agents and pick your agent. That would be a great place to be. You really want to form a relationship with this person as if it is a business relationship. So the way that you personally interact with the agent is very important. If you're going to be rubbing each other the wrong way throughout your entire relationship, even if you only have one offer of representation, it might not be beneficial to either of you to kind of enter into that relationship. Which is, again, a hard truth to kind of stomach. You have one offer of representation. So, if you get multiple offers, you get to choose. If you have an agent that's saying, hey, I need your answer right now, you don't have any time to interview the other offers that you have, don't go into a relationship with that person. That's kind of unethical. Agents will say that's unethical. And you have time, usually about 2 weeks, to accept or reject their offer of representation. So it's kind of a little bit of a warning, because there are agents that'll be like pushing you. Let's see, sorry, there's only 2. I'm confusing something later in the presentation, but yeah, that's the two things that can happen. Obviously, you can get round rejections and then move on to a different project. So then, if you do accept an offer of representation, you will be presented with a contract. You need to be 100% certain that you know and understand and are happy with the terms of the contract. They will include physical book sales, ebook sales, movie rights, international rights. If you don't know how to read contracts or you're confused about something, consult a lawyer, because this will affect your sales or your compensation for the life of that work. So it's really important that you understand the way contracts work. And contract law can be very confusing because things written in contract don't nullify contract law. Contract law will inform the way that the contract is enforced regardless of what's in the contract. So it's a little bit confusing if you're not really abreast of contract law. So consulting a lawyer is probably a good idea because the agent is motivated to make money for themselves, not for you in general. Okay, so the next thing that's going to happen is once you got all that together, the agent's probably going to make you do some form of edits. You get all that submitted, everybody's happy with the manuscript, you're going to go on submission, which means your agent is sending out your manuscripts to whatever editors they have a relationship with that they think will like your novel. Really, this can be a very stressful time for writers, even more so than sending out on query, because when you're out on query, there isn't as much hope wrapped up in the outcome. When you're on submission to publishers, you start to feel like you're just 1 degree away from actually being published, so it can be very stressful. And then there are really 4, this is where the 4 came from before. There are really 4 outcomes of submission. One is that you receive a round rejection. No publisher is willing to pick up that book. That's fine. You just need to move on. It's really hard. Obviously, there's a grieving period, etc. But that's hard. You might get 1 offer. Say you get 1 great offer. You take the offer, you run. You might get 1 offer that you kind of deal with the person or the publisher, and you guys go back and forth a little bit. The next thing that might happen is that you get multiple offers, and then again, just like the agents, you get to work with your agent, choose what's right for you, choose what's going to make you the most money, or maybe not even that. Choose what's going to, maybe they have better international rights, maybe they have, more access to media. You talk about all these things with the editor, and then you choose your publisher. And then the 4th outcome, an outcome everyone hopes for, is a bidding war. There are lots of books every year that that go into a bidding war with publishers, and obviously, like, you become the celebrity, they want you, and that's everyone's dream is for your book to be just like everyone's clawing and fighting for your novel.
Bob offered me a Mercedes, why are you not offering?
Yeah, true. Now, one caveat that I didn't write here that I kind of want to talk about is earning out. So what this means is, say you are in a bidding war and your novel is purchased for $250,000. Oh my gosh, I can retire. No, you can't. $250,000 is not enough to retire on. And also, you have to earn out that amount. So getting a large advance is not necessarily the best thing that's ever happened to you. Earning out means that you have to make back the publisher the entire amount of your advance before you start to receive royalties. Royalties don't happen for whatever, however many books it takes to make back that advance for the publisher. If you don't earn out, the publisher might not publish you again, and other publishers may be wary to publish you. So receiving a really large advance is kind of a double-edged sword. It's very exciting, but if you don't earn out, they might ask you back. If you make a lot of money, they'll probably ask you back, and you probably won't get a 6-figure advance again, but that's okay. But it is kind of this balancing act of, maybe a publisher offers me a 6-figure deal, maybe a publisher offers me a high 5-figure deal, and we're talking, this is like 1% of 1%. But maybe you take the lower amount because it's got better, better rights, better royalties, and a lower advance, and maybe you're more confident on earning out that amount. So that's kind of something else to consider is the math on,
You can finish your thought.
Oh, yeah, just the math.
I was just gonna say, it seems like there's parallels between book publishing and the recording industry.
Okay.
I mean, I'm not into either, really, but I read a lot about people, bands that struggle, and they finally get a record deal, and they get an advance, and it's supposed to pay for their record, and they go nuts, and they don't use the money wisely, and then one record, and all of a sudden they're looking for another record deal.
Yeah, so I think the difference there is that books cost publishers nothing to write, whereas music costs a lot to produce. So you as a writer can always continue to write. To get time in a recording studio is very expensive, so luckily, like they might not be able to continue recording because it's expensive. We can continue to write no matter what. So yeah, it sounds like the advance system is very similar, but luckily nobody can stop us. We need a laptop, maybe a pen. They need tens
Well,
of
a lot of
thousands of
people
dollars in
record
equipment.
pretty much in home studios now
That's
for
true.
very cheaply.
Yeah, that's true. I don't know that much about recording, but that sounds similar. Okay, so now we're gonna dive into the anatomy of a query letter. In front of you on the handout is kind of the breakdown of that, and then on the back is a kind of a sample query letter for the book that I wrote, so y'all aren't gonna recognize any of the words in it, but it'll go essentially line by line into this methodology of writing a query letter. So the first thing I want to talk about is, much like a resume, we want to limit our query letter to 1 page. If it's more than 1 page, it's just annoying. They're not going to read it. They don't want to read it. It means your back cover copy is probably too long. You've included too much information about yourself that they don't care about. So really try and limit it to 1 page. And if you can't limit it to 1 page, you need to tighten up your blurb. And like I said before, this is a business partnership. So when you're pitching your book, you're pitching a business deal for them. How can you make your book seem like the best business deal to the agent? You want to sound competent and knowledgeable about your book, but you also want to sound that way about publishing and about the agent. And you have to do this all in a very, very small format. So it does become a little bit challenging. And we're all writers, so we know how to write, but writing a query letter combines fiction writing and business writing in a really confusing way. And if you don't have a business background, it can be really challenging to kind of like keep your authorial voice and also engage that more business side. So I'm going to talk about a specific method of query writing that agents, they don't look for it, but it's really easily consumable within their agency. The first person who reads your query letter is not going to be an agent. It's probably going to be an intern or an assistant or something like that. So they're looking for specific pieces of information, and if you don't include these, they're going to toss it out because they're receiving thousands of these and they're reading, a fraction of that and they're accepting a very small fraction of that. So you really want to make it easily consumable. So the hook, book, cook method is a 3-section method, and it just gives us an easy way to kind of deliver this information. So the hook section is a little like information summary of your book. The book section is where we're going to have our back cover copy, so that's the blurb. That is not a summary. We do not include the conclusion of our novel in our back cover copy. Everybody mad if you went to the bookstore and you read the back of a book and it told you, oh, and then he died at the end, right? So, right, and so you don't want to do that in your query letter either. You really want to entice the agent to read your manuscript, much like you would want to entice a reader at a bookstore to read the actual novel. So and then the third section is the cook section. You talk about yourself a little bit, but we'll dive into that. So when you begin your letter, you want to say, "Dear," the name of the agent. If you write a form query letter and it says, "Dear agent," or to whoever it may concern, out the door, not going to read it. If you haven't done the research on the agent, out the door, they're not going to read it. They're not. They don't want random you can send out hundreds of query letters to random agents if that's what you want to do, but they're not going to read it. So it's got to say, "Dear," I think mine says Miss Hunter, who is an agent at the Night Agency in Atlanta. So you really want to be specific. You can say first and last name, you can say Mr. or Ms. If you're unsure about their pronouns, say their full name. And then you want to include a connection point to that agent. The more specific that connection point, the better chance of them actually reading it you'll have. So that could be, I heard you talking about on this podcast that you love, butterflies or whatever. So I have this novel, blah, 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 whatever. Or I met you recently at the AWC conference, and I spoke to you about XYZ, and I'd love to, you said that you'd love to, you know, read my manuscript. So something that specific is ideal. Obviously, you're not gonna have that with every agent. So the example that I have in the back is, I saw that you loved grounded fantasy on your manuscript wish list, or however I phrased it. That's okay to say, I saw you said you liked law on this website or on manuscript wish list or on your website. It's not an ideal connection because it's not personal, or it's not as personal as you would like it to be, but it works. And that's what I've done here because I haven't spoken to an agent recently, so that's what I've done. And then, after you kind of touch on that connection point, if you don't have a connection point with the agent, you really need to look for one. Look through their social media, look through their blog, look on their website, really try and dig up that connection point. They might be enthralled enough with the blurb to kind of overlook that, but they might not even read the career letter because they don't really care about you, they never heard you. So the next thing that you need in your career letter is your title in all caps. The grammatically correct way to provide a book title is in italics. But in a career letter, we put our own book title in all caps. That is what is expected. If you do it in italics, they're not going to reject you, but putting it in all caps really shows your level of research. Okay, and they really like levels of research. They like hardworking people, they like informed people, so that's really going to show that you really researched how to write a career letter. And then you're going to include your commercial genre. That would be something like upmarket fiction, women's fiction, literary fiction, fantasy, sci-fi, those really commercial genres. It's not going to be like a, what's it called? A content genre. A content genre would be like action adventure. That's not a commercial genre. So you really need to hone in on where would this be shelved in a bookstore, and then provide that. Obviously, upmarket is not a shelf in the bookstore, but is a very important section of fiction, and it is considered a commercial genre. If you write literary fiction that's a bit plotty, look up what upmarket fiction is, and you might fit in there, and that's very popular, so that could give you a foot in the door. So the next thing you want to provide is the finished word count. You need to look up the word counts of your genre, the expected word counts. In general, 90,000 words is around right for most genres, not for middle grade. It's way too long for middle grade. It's a little bit long for YA. It's okay for general fiction, maybe a tad long. They might like around 80,000 more. Fantasy is going to be longer. So know that range. If you're not in that range for your debut novel, you might be in trouble. Might. There are lots of debut novels that exceed that, but just to give yourself a better chance, being in that range is ideal.
Did you say 90,000?
Yeah, so if you're at 90,000 for almost anything, in adult fiction, if you're at 90,000, in pretty much any genre, that's going to fit in that range. If you're at 75,000, you're probably low. If you're at 120,000, unless you're fantasy sci-fi, you're probably too high. And it is very important because actually in the last few years, paper costs have gone up by like 30%. So they're really interested in that word count. Publishers are. So if publishers are interested, agents are interested as well. Okay, so the next thing that you need to provide, and this is what I find to be the most challenging, are comp titles. 1 or 2 comp titles will do. One of them needs to be at least within the last 5 years, published within the last 5 years. Some agents say published within the last 3 years, depending on what you can find. Comp titles to me are the most challenging part of this. And also, something I want to note is that, sorry, Tammy, how much time do I have, you know?
Oh, you've got like 30 minutes. If
Oh,
you need
good.
it. Yeah.
I have no
Well, you
idea.
need to take a deep breath and enjoy the spotlight. No, you've got
You're
plenty of
doing a
time.
spectacular job.
There's so much information. Now you'll know how many podcasts I've listened to. It's gonna be amazing. Yeah, so within the last 3 to 5 years, you really want that contemporary title. It really shows that you have a place in the market. So there are a few rules around this, though. You kind of want it to be published by a big 5 publisher or by a large indie publisher, like I said, like Tor.com or Tor, if you know who that is. If they weren't published by one of those big publishers, you might not want to use it as comp title for a book that you would like to be published by a big publisher. They want to see that participation in the market that they are reaching out to. You also want it to have performed well in sales. If you find a book and you're like, oh, this is exactly like my book, and it's got 5 Goodreads ratings, please don't use that. It needs to have performed well in sales. The whole point of a comp title is to say, here, my book is like this book, and also this book is amazing. My book's also amazing. So really look at how many reviews it has. What if you can find sales numbers, you can. But if you really look at how many reviews it has and stuff, and really think to yourself, does this actually seem like a book that's popular and has, it doesn't even have to be well received, honestly. Like if it has a 3.05 on Goodreads, but it's got 100,000 ratings, they don't care if it's well received. They care if it's well purchased, right?
It is a business, and you're driving that point home.
Yeah.
It's not, we're not creating great art unless it can also sell.
Right. It
Because
has
they
to
are a
sell.
business, and that's their intention.
They're mainly a business. They're not
Yes.
gonna put art out there that doesn't make money, no matter how much you want them to. The next thing you don't want your comp title to be is ubiquitous. So don't use Harry Potter. Don't use Lord of the Rings. Don't use Hunger Games. Those are not titles that you wrote. Nothing that you wrote is like Harry Potter. It cannot be ubiquitous. They don't think that you wrote something, that transcends genre and literature. So don't use those. If you think it might be semi-ubiquitous, really think about it hard. And then if there's something in your comp title that stands out, your book needs to have that thing. So if you have a comp title that is beautiful writing, your book needs to have beautiful writing. If that's the main thing that sells that book, your book needs to have beautiful writing. If you pick a comp title that's like really pacey and you just want to read it all day long, you can't put it down, your book needs to be really pacey. If you pick, say you picked Harry Potter. Sorry, Chris, you have a question? If you pick Harry Potter, and we're not doing that, but that's an example that everyone knows. If you pick Harry Potter as your comp title because it's got an orphan in it, and that's it, that's a horrible comp title. It's like, that's not the point of Harry, it's part of the point, but it's not the point of Harry Potter, and they're not gonna like that comp title. They're gonna be like, this person doesn't know what they're talking about, and they're gonna be disappointed by your book, most likely. Okay, so the last thing that you might want to include in the hook section is a log line. You don't have to include this. It is a nice little transition piece, and I did include one, and we'll go over that in just a second, but a log line is something that is actually more popular in film than it is in publishing. But a good log line has 3 things. It shows the protagonist, the conflict, and the goal. And you can just give the reader of the query a little glimpse into what they might read in the blurb, because giving them that little glimpse really pushes them to now read the blurb. What might happen is they read your first paragraph and they say, I don't care about this, and they throw it out the window, right? But if you put a little log line at the end, they'll be like, oh, actually, maybe we should read about this because it sounds really interesting. So what I want to do, can I actually have one of those sheets? Is look at the first paragraph of this little example query letter that I wrote and talk about how each of these things are exemplified in this query letter. So yeah, like I said before, the connection point to the agent is that I saw that she loves grounded, this is real, this is an agent, and this is what it really said on her manuscript wish list. She said she really loves grounded fantasy, and so I said, I think you would enjoy my book, Thicker Than Water, all caps, in this 90,000 word adult fantasy novel, all in there, word count, genre. You want to include the age range, which is not technically genre, but it is the commercial genre, includes age range. So yeah, adult fantasy, if you don't do, make sure you include adult. If you just put general fiction, they're going to be like, okay, well, I don't know what that is. So adult or YA or young or children's fiction, fantasy novel, for readers of The Adventures of Amina al-Sarafi and The 5th Season. So these are, and those should be in italics. When I copy pasted it, it lost my formatting, but those should be in italics.
So those are your comp titles right there?
Those are my comp titles.
Yeah, 5th season, yeah.
Yeah. 5th Season might be a little bit too ubiquitous, but I was not prepared to do enough research to actually. He thinks it's okay, so we're gonna pretend like it's okay. Yeah, The Adventures of Amina al-Sarafi is also a female-led fantasy novel, and my book is also a female-led fantasy novel. So there you go. So let's see. The other thing I wanna touch on here is there is a commercial age range that has been used up until recently and is kind of fading out of fashion, called new adult. 3 years ago, I would have said new adult is relevant, and that if you're writing with your main character in the age range of 17 to 23, you might be a new adult, but it is not really used anymore. So I recommend you either pick YA if your writing feels younger, or if your writing feels older and you have some content in there, that you pick adult. I heard someone, a person who's in publishing, I can't remember exactly who it was, but they were talking about how new adult's not something that is really published anymore because it kind of flopped. Okay, so yeah, so I picked The Adventures of Amin al-Sarafi and the 5th season as my comps. You can, in this section, say why you chose those comps. So using the voice from Amin al-Sarafi and the whatever from this other book, or even if you pick 2 comp titles, you can even say a movie or a TV show. I'm gonna say a really old one because I don't watch much new TV, but like with the comedy of Friends and the whatever of this other book, right? Just make sure that the single book title that you have in there, if you're choosing a different media, is within the last 3 to 5 years, was published within the last 3 to 5 years. So that is a way that you can kind of play with it and communicate more about what's happening within your book. Is if you wrote something that's like, you know, has characters similar to, I don't know, what's a good TV show? Gilmore Girls. Like with the setting of Gilmore Girls, right? Like with a setting similar to. That's a great way to get across like exactly what you wrote without having to think of another book title for that. And then at the end, I have my little log line. 2 disheartened sisters must flee their thoughtless husbands to hide a pregnancy and find power within their own lives. And that's just like really, really tight summary of what happens. And like you can see the log line protagonist, conflict, goal. It's exactly what it says. 2 disheartened sisters, protagonists, they're both, it's dual. So both protagonists flee their thoughtless husbands to hide pregnancy and find power within their own lives. So yeah, conflict and goal. All within that little short blip of sentence. Okay, so the next thing we're talking about is our blurb. Even if you have a publishing deal already and you don't have to write another query letter, you'll have to write a blurb. Almost all authors write their own back cover copy, at least the initial back cover copy. So this isn't something that you'll do once, like a query letter. This is something that you'll do over and over again, you get published over and over again. So learning to read and write back cover copy is a really important skill. And it can be very challenging because you're trying to provide enough information for intrigue, not to spoil anything, but also to kind of have that, I know this is called book, first one's called hook, but this will have the hook for the reader. So how can you hook the reader? All kind of, again, in that really small format, usually under 300 words. I think this is maybe 200. So the best way to kind of learn this, or what I found the best way to learn how to write a blurb, is go into the bookstore or go to your home library or whatever, and just read the back of books, especially books that are similar to yours, especially your comp titles. Turn the books over, read that blurb, think about how it actually fits, because certain blurbs are going to be not good for query letters and certain books blurbs are. So just really understand the cadence of a blurb. It has a specific cadence to it. If you read a lot of them, you'll kind of understand what that cadence is. And I'll talk about in the kind of formula here how you achieve that. But the more you read them, the more you're going to understand how to write your back cover copy. You really want to stick to 1 or 2 paragraphs for this. More is not going to sound better. You want tight copy. It's going to be more compelling, deliver more information in a very short space of time. It also shows that you have a command of the English language. If you can write tight back cover copy, if you've written a 120,000 word novel and then you write a tight back cover copy, you have shown that you have flexibility. You can really work with the agent in the way that they're going to want you to either work on your book or in the future write other back cover copy or write even your author bio, things like that. So you want to show how you're able to fit so much information in a really small package with good prose. I'm adding that personally. I just think the good prose are always important. So, the first thing that you need to identify here is the protagonist, their vocation, and then where they are in the book when you come upon them, right? So their initial situation. So here I've written, Neneth is the perfectionist wife of a powerful magical leader and wants nothing more than to have a child of her own. Mara is a powerless mother of 3, living in an idyllic country cottage, but when her husband's reckless work habits and her unexpected pregnancy collide, she cannot see a path through their poverty. So that is both those sentences together, because again, dual POV. If you have more than 2 protagonists, pick your 2 most important protagonists and include those 2. Don't do 3 or 4. It's going to start being messy and confusing, and really try and condense that down. I write fantasy, so there are often way more than 2 protagonists. I actually have 4 point of views in here, but the 2 main ones are the sisters. So yeah, in those 2 sentences, protagonist, their vocations, and their initial situations, all provided. And then you want to introduce the main plot problem. Obviously, there can be many plot problems in your novel. Really think about what that main one is. And it can obviously change when you get to the 3rd act, if you do 3-act structure. When you get to the 3rd act, a lot of times you have kind of a switch into a slightly different plot problem, but yeah, you really want to introduce the most compelling one that makes sense with the initial situation, if that makes sense. You have to be able to play out that initial situation. How are they moving forward through the plot? So here I said the sisters come together to solve both problems by scheming to conceal Mara's pregnancy and pass off the baby as Neneth's own. That is my initial plot problem for probably 80% of my novel. And then it changes, but that's where we're right now. And then you want to identify the main death stakes. Death stakes aren't necessarily about death. I think there's 3 types of death stakes. Don't quote me on that. Physical death stakes, death.
That was 100%.
Yeah. Professional death stakes. So, like, say your book's about a lawyer and he, gets his license revoked. Professional death stakes, and a 3rd one that I cannot think of right now. I think relational death stakes.
Yeah.
Relational death stakes. Yeah. And I should know that because that's a lot of what my book's about is relational death stakes. So you want to provide the death stakes of your novel. Every novel has death stakes. Maybe not everyone, but almost every novel has death stakes. So really trying to identify that. That is going to be what creates the tension in your novel, and the agent really, really wants to know about that. They want to know, why should I keep reading? And that's kind of what my whole second paragraph is about. You have room here to kind of expand on your main plot, explain a little bit about what's going to happen, and then how does that lead into the climax. So I said they travel to the seaside town of Kewen to execute their plan, and each go on their own journeys to discover the truth of their pain. But when an invading force of magical foes appears on the horizon, they must flee across a care. Mara goes into labor and their hidden world spins out of control. They arrive at the epicenter of magical power and must survive both the battle ahead and their husband's unearthing of their lies. So you can see at the end there, I talk about physical death stakes and relational death stakes. You don't have to include every death stake that's in your novel. There's probably all of them in your novel, but the ones that are most powerful include at the end. You really want to hook the agent into finding out, this was about a secret pregnancy, and now there's physical and relational death stakes. What? Okay. That's really what you want, is create these questions for the agent. I've heard several agents say they don't like rhetorical questions. So it's very, very tempting when you're writing this to write a rhetorical question. Say, will they survive the battle, right? You can create the rhetorical question without actually asking it. So what I said is they must survive both the battle ahead and their husband's unearthing of their lives, right? I didn't say, will they survive? No. It feels a little unprofessional. It feels a little silly when you ask a rhetorical question. Some agents won't throw your query letter out because of it, some will. So it's kind of, there's arguments about it, is what I'll say. But if you don't have to include it, why would you in that case? So that's kind of the blurb. There are so many ways to do your blurb. You really just want to make sure that the writing is strong and that you're communicating all 3 of these things really, really clearly. I actually had a different blurb, and I was talking to Tammy about this before, and that I think was better, and then the file corrupted, and so I'm a little bit salty. I actually hate this blurb, but we're just gonna move past it. Yeah, once you, does anyone do this where they write something and they think it's great, and then you can't get it, it like disappears somehow, and you can't rewrite it the same way? Yeah, so that's what this is. So.
I got a question about the.
Yeah, sure.
Is it advisable, inadvisable to talk about not only the protagonist, but perhaps a key villain that's in?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so, I mean, here you can see that I talk about the
Yeah,
magical foes.
But but this, I'm talking about a.
Yeah, you definitely want to include, that's definitely the conflict of the novel, so you want to include the conflicts with that person, and then, like, definitely, like, if you're writing a career letter for Harry Potter, Voldemort would be in there, 1,000%. So, you, and probably some other people, but who are also, maybe Snape too. Sorry, Harry Potter always gets my brain going in a different direction. Yeah, so definitely include your main villain if you have one. I don't think, oh gosh, I've never written a book with a villain in it. It's just like a weird, I don't know why that happens to me, but it doesn't, or it does. So I would say if you write kind of very protagonist, antagonist novels, you definitely want to include your antagonist.
Yeah.
What if that's what you have? What if you really like to write the villain, and so the I guess protagonist doesn't come into way later?
I would say that that's your protagonist.
Okay.
In
That's-
this context.
That's what I think too.
Yeah.
I just wasn't sure how that
Yeah,
was.
it's like Karate Kid, right? Like Karate Kid is the antagonist.
Yeah, yeah.
It's a very spicy opinion, but it is true. So yeah, there's definitely, I would say that like, you don't have to use the word protagonist. If you want to say main character, that's fine.
Yeah.
And I'm sure, like, are you writing the book so that the reader roots for this person?
Not this one.
Oh.
This is a different one. No, this is a whole different. In fact, I had a little trouble with it at
Okay.
first.
Unlikable main characters are one of my favorite things, so.
Well, now I really like him.
Yeah.
But at first, I was like, why am I even writing this? I had to start to like my own character, and I'm like, well, you're the one that created it, so why didn't you create it better? But I just didn't like him for a while. I had to find out what his deal was.
Yeah, so that's really interesting. And this might apply to you. Something that agents look for is an ironic main character. So it is a main character that is ironic to their circumstances, which is a lot of times what a antagonist as a main character is. So if you can kind of, I don't know if this is specific to what you're writing, but if you have a main character that's like, I don't know, really introverted and has to go be the president, right? Like you want to include that ironic main character point in your blurb as well. So whatever, whenever you're following this person, whatever their bad trait is, those two things are probably ironic to each other, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that is something that agents look for. That's just a little note. I do have an ironic main character, but it's not like the main thing, so I include that. But that is something you can use to kind of give your query letter a little bit of spice. Is why are they ironic? Any other questions about the blurb before I move on to the next section? So the next section is the cook section, i.e. the author. If you don't have anything that you've published, that you have, accomplished, whatever in your writing life, you don't have to put anything, okay? I wrote here, I am a stay-at-home mom of 2 boys who wordsmiths while they sleep. This is my debut novel. They don't want to know that, you're a line cook, okay? Being a line cook is great. They don't care. They want you to be a writer, right? So if your book is about a line cook, oh, please include that. That's great. They want to know if you are a line cook writing about line cooks. That's beautiful. Or if you run a restaurant. They want to know things that are really, what's the word? Relevant. Thank you. So they're to the novel, but they don't want to know extra information. They don't want to know that you're a part of the Cartersville Area Writers Group. That's fantastic. They don't care. They don't want to know that you were published in the anthology here. That's fantastic. They don't care. If you have a work published in the New Yorker, they want to know about that. If you have something published in a really great literary magazine that sells a lot of copies, they want to know about that. If you have a book that has good sales, they want to know about that. If you have a book that has poor sales, I wouldn't include that. There's no point in including that. It's really, anything that's going to be a deterrent is not something you want to include. Even if it's a personal accomplishment, it needs to be a commercial accomplishment for them to want to read about it. So, Yeah, the only other thing here is if you have a social media following of more than 10,000 people, you can include that here. 10,000 is a large number. If I had 1,000, I'd be happy, right? Or, I mean, I don't even really care, but 1,000 sounds like a lot to me. 10,000 sounds like astronomical, but if you don't have at least 10,000 people, they look at that number and they say, well, the percentage of people that are gonna buy that book, it doesn't really make any sense for us commercially. The other thing is, if you have an email list that has, oh gosh, I heard the number was 100,000 people. I think it's less than that. If you have an email list that's like 10,000, they wanna know about that. So anything where you have a large following, they really wanna know about that. If you write nonfiction, here is, it's going to be essential. They will not publish a nonfiction if you don't have a following of some kind, a large following of some kind. A fiction writer can have casual social media accounts as long as you have them. They're gonna look at that and say, oh, that person, they can do a little bit of social media, it'll be fine. Social media is what sells nonfiction nowadays. So if you wanna write a nonfiction and you don't have 50,000 to plus followers for that niche, like if you're a fitness influencer and you got 100,000 followers on Instagram and you want to write a fitness book, awesome. But if you've written a really niche nonfiction, they're not gonna publish that unless you have a big following, unfortunately. That is kind of a caveat. I know most of us write fiction, but there are some people here who have written some nonfiction. So the last thing that you really wanna have is some sort of thank you. I see a lot of career letters that don't have this. I am from the corporate world, so I think that saying thank you is very important. So I just wrote, thank you for taking the time to read my career letter. I look forward to hearing from you. The prompt at the end is just like an invitation. It's polite, it's an invitation. I'm gonna hear from you. I know I am, right? So that's something that I think is actually really nice to include. And then whatever your professional sign off here is, I use sincerely. Other people use other things. And then your name after that. Something I heard someone talk about recently is that a PS is the second most read part of a career letter after the first paragraph. So some people include a PS and they put their little connection point to the agent there. They'll say, PS, I saw you at the AWC Writers Conference and we spoke about such and such, right? So if you want to do that, that's interesting. I think it's a little bit silly personally, but there are agents that have talked about the PS. And I probably should question them because they know what they're talking about more than I do. Yes.
If you're writing with a pen name, is it typically a little bit different? Do you sign with your pen name, or do they already go in being like, hey, we know you're already associated with this pen name, blah, blah, blah?
I don't think it matters. I mean, legally, like, they're gonna reach back out to you and like, I don't really think it matters. I would say whatever your social media is, if you have social media, or if you have a blog or whatever, you should probably sign with that name so that they can look up, you know, you on the internet. They're gonna wanna do that if they wanna, you know, make an offer or request pages or whatever. So it's kind of up to you in that sense. Obviously, when it comes to legal documents, you have to use your legal name.
Talking about your social media presence, should you include links to your social media?
They'll look you up. And there's no way you can include links in general. Usually, I
Well,
mean,
you know, in an
on the
email
form
or
letter.
something,
Yeah. No, they'll look you up if they want to. And then, so agents, you're gonna submit your career letter. There's going to be formatting guidelines. Obey the formatting guidelines or you're out, okay? And then also some agents require first pages with your query letter. They might ask for a chapter, they might ask for 3 chapters, so you need to include that when you submit your query letter. And so what happens after that is if they like you, if you just sent a query letter, they might come back and say, hey, we wanna read first pages, so they'll ask for those chapters. And if they like those, they're gonna request a full, which just means your full manuscript. So it's really, really important that your full manuscript is 100% done before you do this, because you could send a query letter and they could literally come back the next day and be like, hey, we want your full, and you'll just be like, well, yeah. And that's embarrassing, it's unprofessional, they're not gonna work with you in the future, they're gonna think you're unprofessional, even if they like your work. There's a lot of books out there, so that's really deeply important. But yeah, I think that's pretty much all of my material.
That's
It's
amazing.
A lot of information for you guys, so if you have questions later, you can always look me up on the CAW Facebook page and send me a message.
That was great.
Yeah, it was.
You did so much research. That was incredible.
Yeah.
You nailed all the points. it through, and less is more.
Yeah, it is.
You could write the world's greatest novel, but they're never gonna read it if you can't follow a strategy like what you've outlined here.
Yeah, the strategy, so this is just one strategy, that is something I want to talk about, like, you can go online, you Google, successful query letters, and you'll get a ton of examples of query letters that got an agent. They're all gonna be formatted a little bit differently. They all have these pieces of information in them. They might be like, some people start with the blurb because they want the punch right out the gate, and then they do the information about their novel, and then they do the information about them. Some people start with their bio at the top. I don't really think that makes any sense because they don't care about you if you're a debut novelist at all, unless you're nonfiction. If you are querying for nonfiction, I really encourage you to go look up something else, because the query letter format for nonfiction is similar, but it is not the same, and the information that you're providing is not the same, and I don't write nonfiction, so I have no idea what it's really supposed to look like. But yeah, so you can look those up, read a bunch of them, and kind of like ingest what they sound like, and then you can decide what works best for you. If you want to have the blurb at the top, if you know, kind of mix it up a little bit. But this is just one that is simple and straightforward and easy, again, for the agent to digest.
When you are searching for an agent, I mean, I've looked at, novels that I've just loved, and then like completely stalk someone online, like who is their agent for this book, but they're in like the UK. I'm like, well, that seems really impractical. I mean, are you thinking for the debut novel it'd be more it would be a better choice to try to find somewhere regionally local?
No, so I don't think that agents, and especially in the Southeast, are going to be usually your best choice. I talked about the Night Agency in Atlanta, and that's kind of a fluke. Like, I really do. They represented the fifth season, which is, they represent a lot of great fantasy novels, but in general, you're not going to have many agents in the Southeast that are going to be what you're looking for. If you want a Big 5 contract, you probably are going to have an agent out of New York City. That's where they mostly are. Yeah, that's fine. I would say don't apply to or query agents that are not in the United States. You want an American agent. You want an American publisher. Other people from other countries want to publish in the United States. Like, not that there's no reason to publish in other countries. Like, you can make some money publishing in other countries. But if you want a big deal,
It's the market here.
it's the market here. And you're an American, so you already have a
Court advantage.
you do. So look for an American one. They can be, it doesn't. They can edit your novel from New York. Who cares? You FaceTime them. They might fly down every few years and meet them. You might fly to New York and have a meeting with them. They better pay for that, by the way. Don't be paying your own plane ticket. But yeah, so I don't think their locale matters as long as they're American.
Okay.
Yeah, and I wanted to add to what you were saying about agents. Never, ever, ever, ever pay an agent. Ever, ever. If they ask for money up front, it's not.
Just pay to play, that's a scam.
What is the going rate right now? I know for like actors, it's anywhere from 15 to 25%.
No, it's oh gosh, I can't remember. I think it's like 5 or 7%. It's not as bad as acting. I can't remember. I'd have to look that up. I used to know. It's probably changed too, but it's not that bad. Obviously, like when you get traditionally published, like most of the profit goes back to the publisher, but that's because they take on all the risk. The agent takes on very little risk. All they're risking is their time. The publisher takes on all the risk of the physical product, and all the risk of your advance. So that's how money works. It makes a lot of authors mad that publishers take such a big cut, but they take on almost 100% of the risk in the transaction. So I think it's like you usually make 15 cents per copy or something like that, or 15% per copy, something like that, which obviously compared to self-publishing where you make 85% per copy, it sounds really bad. I think that if you are a consistent traditional publisher, you will make more money than a inconsistent self-publisher. But obviously it can go either way for either path. So it is, if you feel salty, if you think about 15% of the MSRP for your novel makes you salty already without even having a book published, then that's probably not the path for you.
But I mean, your publishers are also covering the like advertising or something,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Well,
Some.
so if you get a 6-figure deal, they're 100% gonna advertise your book. They're gonna advertise all over the place. If y'all remember when Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow came out, and it was everywhere, it was the Barnes Noble Book of the Year, it was on billboards, oh my gosh, amazing. That was not Gabrielle Zevin's first book, it was like her 7th book. You will probably not receive very much advertising money. You can work with your editor and push as an author to receive more attention from their advertising department, but you're not gonna receive much. The difference with traditional publishing versus self-publishing is that you'll be in bookstores. So most likely, unless your book has really terrible early reviews or something, you will be in bookstores even if they don't provide like that really, that big advertising push that you might expect from a traditional publisher. But you as the author are kind of still responsible for the majority of the advertising.
I mean, because it probably worked out a better deal for there was this one author I was watching on TikTok. She wrote Lights Out, and then she immediately got greenlit for a second book. And then her second book comes out, she's like, oh hey, they greenlit me for a third one.
Yeah.
So
That's probably, does she have a large TikTok
she
following?
does.
Yeah, that's why. That's different. So the other, that is something that comes into play a lot. Like I consume a lot of YouTube, as you can tell from this presentation. Yeah, so if you have a large YouTube following or a large TikTok following or whatever, and you write a mediocre novel, like you're gonna get sold. And that's the reason a lot of people have those channels is they wanna talk about books, they wanna talk about writing, there's nothing wrong with that. And so they get these big followings, and that's why their book gets published. I'm a little bit wary of that because my motivation for traditional publishing is pretty much based on affirmation. So that's why I wouldn't want to be published based on my following, but that's kind of where that comes from, is that she's probably gonna get greenlit for anything.
Okay.
Like Christine Riccio, who Poland Banana Books on YouTube, she was like an OG YouTuber, and she's not to be judged, she's a really not a great writer, and she gets you published all the time, and her reviews are just horrible because she's a great YouTube following and people buy it. So
That's okay. I didn't like how the like in the first one she had a climax and then she had another climax that came out of nowhere, and I was like, you hinted about nothing in this. I'm completely thrown for a loop. And then but still, oh hey, I got greenlit for 2 more books.
that's why. If you can sell them, you can write them,
Yeah.
or they'll publish them. They don't care. Like it's the opposite, right? It has to be good if you've got new followers. If you've got tons of followers, they don't care if it's good. So, and the other part of that is you get kind of like the Stephen King effect, where once you get really popular, they kind of stop editing you, and so your books kind of can fall off in quality because they don't tell you no anymore.
You get too big to be bossed
To be
around.
edited, yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
So
Stephen King can wake up and say, boy, I had a nightmare last night. Well, say, we'll publish that.
Yeah. Stephen King is he's an idea writer, so he has an idea and then he writes a whole book based off that idea, even if it's a bad idea, which is great. I'm proud of him. He's a good
Well,
writer.
he struggled for enough years, but I mean, if it hadn't been for the strength of his early work.
He's got some great books that he's published
Sure.
recently, but he's got some not great books
Not
too.
great books.
The structure got loose, like you're saying, like no one's reining him in.
Yep.
On a lot of his work.
Yeah. So that happens with, I mean, if you're going to be published no matter what, I don't think they spend as much time on the quality of the book, which is unfortunate because if you want to be in traditional publishing to get access to those great editors, and the great editors are like they're going to sell thousands of copies no matter what, and so they don't edit your book. That's really kind of a shame. But I don't have that problem because I'm not. I don't have 100,000 followers. Yeah. So there's a lot of complication around social media and publishing, and I think it's a little bit of a shame that the quality of work has taken a dive because of 2 things. I won't reveal one of them, but the other one is social media. So it's unfortunate.
It was awesome. Thank you so much for taking the time and putting this together for us. Thank you.
Okay, could you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Myself, yes. Okay. You probably tell I used to work at Home Depot, corporate. I did a lot of presentations like this, but about shipping, not about writing, much more boring. And then I became a stay-at-home mom about 3.5 years ago, and I've written a couple books. I hope to be traditionally published, so I have not done that. I will be out on Query later this year. So if I seem really sad around Christmas or right after Christmas, you guys will know why. It's because of all the rejections I'm receiving. I'll share some with y'all. That's what I'll do. I'll bring some rejections in so everyone can see the.
Especially if they're good, because there are some good rejections. You can learn a lot from your good rejections.
Yeah, so that's something that I didn't touch on. Rejections aren't all the same. You can get a form rejection that literally just says, thank you for submitting, we are not accepting your novel at this time, ouch. You can get a rejection that really goes into why they rejected you, and that is a compliment. That might mean, oh, I'd really love to pick up this book, but I don't have the space in my calendar, or I really love to pick up this book, but it's not exactly the genre that I don't have the relationship with the right editors. So receiving any kind of specified feedback from an agent is a compliment, and you should take that as, kind of fuel for your fire for continuing.
They paid attention.
They paid attention, an
That's
agent
worth
read
something.
it, not an intern.
Right.
So yeah, that's something that,
Could you use one agent's rejection to piggyback to another agent and then say, hey, they said they didn't have I got a rejection from this agent, he said he just didn't have the right editors for this, but you guys are more focused in this genre, so,
yeah, I wouldn't lead a query letter with a rejection.
Oh,
Yeah, I wouldn't say, even if it was like, oh, this person really wanted me, well, the other agent's probably gonna be like, well, they were just being
I was
polite.
recommended by this person?
Yes, if you have a personal connection where it's like, the agent was specifically like, hey, why don't you check out this other person, they really represent that, that's a great lead-in. If an agent just said, hey, I'm rejecting this, and I really loved it, but I don't have time on my roster, I wouldn't write a query letter that says, hey, I submitted someone before you because I liked them more, and you're my backup, so why don't you pick up this book? Like, that's really, I don't know, half of writing a query letter is like considering the agent's ego, because they will consider their ego, so I wouldn't necessarily do that.
Yeah, I would just probably more voice it as in like, hey, this publisher mentioned you guys, because you guys are more focused on this genre,
Yeah.
I am writing to you off of their recommendation.
Yeah,
Okay.
if they specifically recommend an agent,
Okay.
not if they generally recommend that you keep querying.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Yeah, if they mention somebody.
An agent might also come back to you and say, I really liked this, I don't have room. Please query me again in the future. They could say that, and in that case, make sure you query them again in the future, and make sure your query letter says, last year, 2 years ago, you told me to make sure that I sent you whatever I produced, and here it is. That person will most likely, almost 100%, read that query letter at least. So that is something that might happen as well.
Because they're not in the habit of sparing people's feelings.
No, they don't have to.
They don't have to, right. So if they go to that trouble to say, hey, this was good, but it's not really my niche or
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah,
then-
they're not gonna lie to her to save your feelings.
So you use that as positive feedback.
Yeah, for sure. I would say if an agent's nasty, I wouldn't query them again in the future, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Because there are nasty ones, obviously, like people are people, so there's really nice ones, there's really nasty ones. So that's why the interview process is so important when you're picking an agent. If you interview with an agent and you guys are like oil and water, watch out. Like you wouldn't hire, if you are hiring someone to represent your book. Whether or not it feels like that, it always feels like you're being interviewed. You're not, because you're paying them. You're not paying them. They're getting a portion of your royalties, don't pay them. So yeah, it is really important to not have that.
Do any of them work on a pro bono basis based on the strength of your work possibly getting published? Or do they expect in advance, like she was saying?
No. So they work on spec for a debut novelist. So they're getting $0 until the publishing deal comes through. And they should, like you said, they should get $0 until the publishing. Don't give them your checking account information. If you give someone your checking account information, they can take all the money out of your checking account and they're gone. Okay. So the scamming around publishing is insane. If you have a question about the person, you can look them up on manuscript wish list. You can look them up on Writers Beware. Writers Beware is a great one. That will show you publishers and agents that are not who you want to be working with.
What was the first one that you said?
Manuscript wish list.
Okay.
Now, anyone can list on manuscript wish list, so that doesn't guarantee you anything, but Writers Beware is great. And the great thing about traditional publishing and not going with a smaller press, because smaller presses, sometimes you do have situations where you have a contract, you provide them money, and that used to be called vanity pressing. I don't think anyone calls it vanity pressing anymore, but that could be a situation in which you're paying them, I don't know how that works, I don't know anything about that, but in traditional publishing, you don't provide any information to them. As far as banking, paying them anything, you shouldn't be doing that at all. So it's an easy way to be like, okay, this isn't a scam because, or I can't be scammed because I'm not providing any banking information.
In the beginning, you touched on the fact that it was better to send out just a handful of query letters instead of bombarding everyone you know.
Yeah.
And I took that to mean you were saying from the feedback you get from the handful, you could more tailor it for the other ones in the future. Did I
Yeah.
understand your point?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
So yeah, I said 5 to 10. A lot of people do 10. Depends how hurt your feelings can be at one time. So
Are there certain times a year that you query?
that's a great point. Yes, there are certain times a year that you shouldn't query. So Christmas time, don't query. They're not going to read it until January, and it'll be at the bottom of the pile. Summertime, publishing takes a summer break in New York. So when school's out in New York City, don't know when that is. Probably all of May, June, July, and August. You should not be sending queries. They're not going to read them. They're going to end up at the bottom of the pile. You're not going to be seen, and if you are seen, it's going to be 6 months from when you queried. So that's a great point. I think that for me, the best time to query is about February, because they're coming off of Christmas and they're happy. So I February or maybe October. If you've got a really like a horror novel, if you've got a Valentine's Day novel, if you've got a Christmas novel, don't query at Christmas, query in like November, but really try and frame those queries for those times of year. So if you have a Halloween novel, try, the end of September. They're just as much vulnerable to kind of the times of the year as anybody else is, and being kind of leaning into that. And then they can look at that and say, okay, can I slot this in 2 years from now? Can I slot this in next year? Try and take advantage of those things. And yeah, that was a great question, because if you query during the summer, they're not there. They're in the Hamptons or whatever.
I'm gonna miss this at the beginning. Where do you source your leads?
My leads, like for agents? So, okay, I look for agents in the acknowledgements of books that I like. So if you have a comp title is great. So if you have a comp title that has an active agent, you can go and look up who agents that author. You can go on manuscript wish list and type in, fantasy or whatever, and then see what people have done. You can look at, say, like my dream is to be published by Tor, right? I can go on Tor, look at Tor books, see who agents those Tor books. So you can find them all over the place. I think that the best way is to look at books similar to yours, not just in the same genre, but for me it would be family-oriented, female-led fantasy, right? And look at those and look at their agents and then query those agents first. I don't even think I could come up with 100 agents to query, if I'm being honest, like agents I actually wanted to work with. I think that it would be more like 15 and I'd be like, I'm done. So I really look for those people that you respect their work and
They'll often acknowledge the agent, and acknowledgements at the
yeah,
end of the
in the
book.
acknowledgements, yeah. Yeah, usually you can find that online as well,
Yeah.
but the acknowledgements are great. Okay,
All right.
I'm sure there's
Thank you.
always bits and pieces that are missing, but if you guys have any questions, I have probably read about it somewhere.
Thank you so
No,
much, really
it was very
appreciate it.
educational.
Yeah. Do we have any other, I know I kind of skipped introductions because I'm a spaz.
You spaz.
And I recognize a lot of faces here, but for the new faces, I'm Tammy Barron. I'm the president of CAW. And do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, because this is totally in order.
It's totally out of order. I'm sorry.
It's fine, it doesn't matter. I'm Mandy Cantrell, I'm executive director of CAW. Are we going this way? We're doing board
Yeah,
first?
so, Katie Smith, I do the website and, social media and the anthology.
And the editing for the anthology.
Yes.
Yeah, yes, thank you for
All
that.
summer long.
I'm Kris Owens. I'm the treasurer, but I also take payments whenever you rejoin or join.
I'll take all
Whichever.
your money.
I'll take all your money.
There is one last thing I wanted to mention. We are starting to kind of put a calendar together and organize for what our 2026 might look like. And we're really interested in opening up some more leadership roles and opening up, some more subcommittees. Currently, we have a conference committee, we have the anthology committee, but, we've talked about maybe having a community engagement committee, similar to what you're doing, and reaching out to that event in Acworth this weekend. So if you're interested in maybe becoming a little more involved in this writing community, I'd like you to just kind of think about in what ways you might want to be involved, and we're gonna open up opportunities to sign up for stuff in the upcoming months. And also topics. We're always looking to find topics that are interesting to you. It's kind of hard because a lot of us are writing different things, writing for different purposes, and so it's just nice to find a nice range of topics that can speak to all of us. So kind of be thinking in your head, what would you like to hear about or to learn about or to practice, and that kind of thing.
I have a couple of things too. One, show of hands, is everybody who wants to be receiving the newsletter monthly? Cause I'm not really sure. I know sometimes it goes to another folder, it might be going to your trash, I don't know.
I'm getting it.
You're getting it?
I'm getting it.
Okay. A lot of that you're gonna see on social media anyway, but there's some differences, and I just wanted to make sure. And another thing is Brie, who is normally here, she's unable to come tonight, so she was printing up invitations to her book launch that's coming up, so in September, so she wanted me to share this information if anybody's interested in going to her book launch in Calhoun. It is September 20th, 2 to 4 at the Harris Arts Center. That's in downtown Calhoun. She goes into detail, don't park on the road, park in the back or the side because it's busy and da-da-da-da-da. But anyway, her book is called The Wooglers, and that's a chapter book for upper elementary school readers. And it's about, it's okay to be different and believe in yourself kind of story. And so she's gonna have reading, Q&A, refreshment, door prizes, all the things.
I think we could put that in our newsletter and let our
I
community
thought she
know
might do
about
that, but she
Yeah.
wanted to make sure I told it too.
Okay.
Here I am, I did it.
All right. Well, welcome back, everybody, and thank you so much for coming tonight. We've got a meeting that we've got to get to after this,
Yes.
and so just really appreciate everyone making the drive and getting here.
Everybody, please grab a shirt we have some shirts left over from our conference. They're large. I think there's 2 extra large in there, so I know it's limited on sizing, but if you have a friend or someone, every time somebody wears this, it's advertisement for CAW, and so we want to give those shirts out, make sure everybody gets one. Even if you got one at the conference, grab one for your sister's friend.
Sounds good.